Hey ladies, welcome back to another episode of Kenya Knows. In my last video, I broke down my live reactions to the first round of the NFL draft, and I really want to talk about some individual players as well as discuss some of my other losers of that draft as well. Since that is officially over, and while some teams are celebrating and others may not be celebrating so much, I kind of wanted to dive into a little bit more of that in some more detail. I'm diving into the picks that I think everybody is sleeping on, very underrated individual picks. I'm also talking about some of the heartbreak stories that I felt was going on that honestly made me want to cry a little bit because I was kind of shocked at some of the slides, at some of the quarterbacks that slid way too far, in my opinion, and the teams that really took an L this weekend. I mean, the Jaguars, sometimes I feel like even the Bills a little bit, the Rams, all of those teams. There are a lot of other teams that I feel like aren't being talked about enough. So I kind of wanted to be a little different and talk about some underrated teams that I think took a massive loss in the NFL draft. Now, before we get into it, please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, hit that like button on my video, and also comment your thoughts down below because I really want to talk to you guys and I want to hear your thoughts. All right, let's dive into it. So I really want to start this off by talking about some of the most underrated picks in this year's NFL draft. One of my favorite players in the entire draft, one of my favorite cornerbacks who I felt was so underrated, and a lot of it had to do with his size, is D'Angelo Pons, the cornerback from Indiana. After a breakout freshman year at James Madison with 51 tackles and 13 pass deflections, Pons transferred to Indiana and became a crazy, crazy cornerback. And let's not forget that he was exceptional in the playoffs for them. That pick six he had in the semifinals was insane. I mean, we're talking about a 5'8" cornerback who, in my opinion, plays a lot bigger than he really is. I think he has great technique. He did an amazing job on Jeremiah Smith, in my opinion. I know Jeremiah Smith got him a few times during the Big Ten championship game, but if you guys don't know, they actually played against one another, I want to say in high school, so he's used to playing against him anyways. So Jeremiah got the best of him. D'Angelo got the best of Jeremiah, so it really was a back and forth matchup throughout that entire game, but I think he was the biggest steal at corner. He was picked up by the Jets, I want to say in the third or fourth round, I want to say. And yeah, he's only 5'8", but he does play like he's 6'1". In 2025, he logged 61 tackles and 12 pass defenses while leading Indiana to a national championship game. He didn't just play well. He literally dominated on some of the biggest stages. Like I said, he won defensive MVP honors in both the Rose Bowl and the Peach Bowl before being drafted by the Jets 50th overall. So that's a honor in itself that he does get to go play for a team that desperately needs secondary help. I think he is going to be a standout, and hopefully he does well against some of these bigger wide receivers. We will have to see, but he is definitely going to have to, I think, rely a lot on his skill. Now, another underrated player that I feel is not being talked about enough is Cashius Howell, the defensive end from Texas A&M. He has some of the most interesting tape, I want to say, as an edge rusher, because while he led the SEC in sacks, I want to say at least once or twice in the past 2 seasons, when you watch his tape, there sometimes it's like he is very indecisive, like he doesn't always have a plan for what he is going to do, either in his first move or his second move. But he is a relentless edge rusher. He was named to the 2025 SEC Defensive Player of the Year after leading the conference with 11 sacks. He is a very high energy defender. He uses his powerful bull rush and an inside spin move a lot, though his short 30-inch arms is what the concern is. Sometimes he does get pushed around by bigger offensive linemen. He was drafted 41st overall to my team, the Cincinnati Bengals, and he does join a revamped defensive front where his 4.59 second speed will give tackles a run for their money, I think. But like I said before, his issue is that if his first move does not work, he has no plan for his second move. And that can be a bad thing for him because he is playing in one of the most defensive minded of divisions in the NFL. So he is definitely going to have to clean that up. He is going to have to be a lot more decisive when it comes to what move he is going to take, especially when he has an open lane to the quarterback. It's like sometimes he doesn't know what to do. So he has to clean that up. I think it will get fixed, but he is a great addition to our defensive line. Another underrated pick. I still feel like we're still underrating what this guy can do, and I just don't understand. But KC Concepcion, wide receiver from Texas A&M, is going to be a sleeper, I think, in terms of being nominated for maybe Offensive Rookie of the Year, or maybe he will be more productive in his first year than people think. He did set a freshman record at North Carolina State prior to transferring to Texas A&M his final season. He put up 919 yards and 9 touchdowns. He is a great separator, in my opinion, and he is a pretty polished route runner. He ended his college career with 25 total receiving touchdowns. He's fast. I think if you utilize him in the middle of the field, that's where he's going to really be the most explosive. And he's going to a Browns team that I feel like has not prioritized wide receiver enough. I think regardless of who starts at quarterback, he is going to be their number one target. Okay, so let's move on to players that I feel bad for because there are a few. I was a little shocked by some of the players that fell, and some of it has to do with injury concerns, and I get that injury histories. Some teams don't want to bank on health with some of these players, but the talent speaks for itself, so I want to talk about some of these players right now. My first player that I feel terrible for is Garrett Nussmeier, quarterback from LSU. He is a first round talent who plummeted to the seventh round, number 224 overall to the Chiefs. Now, my issue with him falling that far is this. When you look at who the Rams picked at 13th, picking Ty Simpson there, I would have much rather them take a shot at picking a guy who has an elite arm for a weapon in Garrett Nussmeier. Take the guy who has the better arm overall. Because if you think about it, right? They traded Jared Goff, Sean McVay did, because he felt like Jared Goff could not run his offensive system in the way that he wanted it ran, which is why he went out of his way to get Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford has a better arm than Jared Goff. He may be not the most athletic, and neither is Jared Goff, but his arm talent speaks for itself. And that's why I felt bad for Garrett Nussmeier. Would it be shocking if Sean McVay trades for Garrett Nussmeier in 3 years? Maybe not. Because Garrett Nussmeier, in my opinion, has a better arm talent than Ty Simpson. And I can argue Carson Beck has better arm talent than him as well. But he dealt with a devastating injury that began in fall camp, forcing him to play through sharp pain all season long behind a struggling offensive line and average wide receivers. He had one of the best defenses, but that was not enough to keep their season going because he was also playing for an incompetent head coach in Brian Kelly. Now, despite only throwing for 1,900 yards in 9 starts during 2025, he proved his talent by winning the Senior Bowl MVP once he finally got healthy in January. And I really did feel like teams were really going to take a shot at drafting him. I was shocked that Carson Beck went over him. I was shocked that Cade Klubnik went over him. I was even more shocked that Drew Aller went over him. I think in terms of arm talent, Carson Beck and Garrett Nussmeier are pretty much very similar. With them other two quarterbacks, not even close to me. Not even close. Now, another player that I felt bad for is Jermod McCoy, cornerback, Tennessee. Once considered a potential first-round pick, he fell to the fourth round, number 101 overall, to the Raiders. Now, it's a great pickup for the Raiders because they're in a situation right now where they can't afford to wait a year for him to get healthy because he does have to get another surgery. But he did But the thing is that McCoy suffered a torn right ACL in January 2025, and he missed pretty much his entire final season. And then there was reports of a plug surgery, meaning a cartilage transplant, raised major flags for scouts regarding his long-term durability. He is by far the best corner in this draft. Yes, it may not be a big gap between him and Mansour Delane, but I would argue that in terms of the size, the athleticism, the footwork, I think McCoy could have been used in different ways, in more versatile ways than Mansour Delane would have been. So now I want to talk about other losers of this draft because I do not feel like enough people are talking about it. So let's get into it. The Jacksonville Jaguars are clear losers of this draft. Now the positives are they snagged Emmanuel Pregnon, a 6'4", 318 offensive guard who was a first-team All-American at Oregon in 2025. That is a plus for them, especially considering they have had major offensive line issues prior to the 2025 season. But my biggest issue with them is the fact that the Jaguars lost major stars like Devin Lloyd, Travis Etienne, and Greg Newsome II, and Andrew Wingard in free agency, and they failed to find immediate replacements for them. They drafted like 2 tight ends, 2 wide receivers, a safety, a defensive tackle, and I want to say an edge rusher, but they all look like developmental pieces for me. To me, and it's the fact that they were literally just in the playoffs last season and they had the overall better team, in my opinion, than the Bills did. And they were 1 interception away from pulling off the ultimate upset. And now it doesn't even seem like they're going to get a chance to get back to that because of how many pieces they lost and how many pieces they didn't replace. And what is going on with the 49ers? They are clear losers of this draft because the head scratcher for me was the fact that with the first pick in the second round, number 33, I believe, they drafted Deshaun Stribling, a wide receiver from Ole Miss. When you have enough wide receivers on your team as it is, yes, I get the injury histories with all of them, but they did not need to go wide receiver here. They needed an offensive tackle, an offensive guard, a right tackle, maybe get a new left tackle and start developing him so that way he can replace what you already have at left tackle, Trent Williams, in a few years. I didn't get anything that they did. And despite their quarterback dealing with a foot injury for half of the season, the Niners completely ignored that big need, which was their offensive line. And then their current line is young and inexperienced. So taking another skill position when you need to keep your quarterback upright is just a massive, massive gamble, in my opinion. It was stupid, in my opinion. They didn't do anything. There were tons of head scratchers. And I don't know what happened with John Lynch. There was a time where 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, where he was entering that Howie Roseman tier. We were talking about the two of them as being like, yin and yang or yang and yin or whatever. Like they were like the dynamic duo in a way. They were having such major success with their draft classes, drafting a George Kittle a few years ago, maybe 5-10 years ago or whatever. Whenever they drafted him, they had Deebo Samuel and getting Nick Bosa, Trent Williams, Brock Purdy. There were just so many good drafts that he had. And then all of a sudden you fast forward to, I want to say 2024, maybe 2023, his draft classes have not been up to par. He is relying on his older players, and he's also relying on his head coach to not only develop these young average players, but to keep his older players at the same elite level that they always have been. Okay, when you get older, your eliteness kind of goes down. So I don't really understand the mindset, the logic behind what John Lynch has been doing in these past few drafts. All right, so that is going to do it for this episode of Kenyon Knows. To my ladies who love football, who live, breathe football, I want to hear your thoughts about your losers in the NFL draft. I want to hear your thoughts about who you felt bad for in this draft. And I also want to hear who are your most underrated players in this NFL draft. So please leave a comment down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.